You are listening to The Vocal Technologist. Spoken tech for your ears.
Imagine you never click a buy button ever again. Just picture that scenario for a second. You tell your phone you need groceries, and an AI agent goes out, negotiates the price of your milk across 4 different supermarkets, selects the items, and authorizes the payment completely invisibly.
Yeah, with zero human input whatsoever.
Exactly. You do not lift a single finger. It sounds entirely like science fiction, but heavyweight tech and finance companies are quietly laying the concrete for this exact reality right now. I am your resident vocal technologist, your tech-savvy mate here, to help you understand the future of finance without having to read through dozens of dry corporate reports.
Which, let us be honest, nobody has the time for anyway.
Right, exactly. So our mission is to pull apart the intersection of AI, big money, and the complete rewiring of how businesses and everyday consumers transact. We're going to get right into the materials and look under the hood of what is actually happening.
It is a fascinating space to unpack because we are essentially talking about rebuilding the fundamental plumbing of global commerce. For decades, human beings have been the primary bottleneck in every financial transaction.
Oh yeah, we are definitely the slow ones in the loop.
Exactly. We are the ones who have to, read the screen, type in the credit card numbers, and click confirm. We are removing that bottleneck entirely, and the mechanical implications of doing that are just staggering.
Undeniably staggering. And to understand where this is all going, we actually need to start at the endpoint of commerce, which is the checkout, because the traditional checkout process is effectively dead.
Yeah, it is entirely obsolete in this new model.
Right. And the underlying plumbing of the internet needs a complete overhaul to accommodate what is coming next. We are shifting from these visible, clunky checkout processes to invisible payments triggered by real-world events.
Precisely. The industry calls this agentic commerce.
Yeah.
But here is the fascinating part. The first instinct for major retailers was to simply stuff traditional checkouts into AI chat interfaces.
Right. They thought, let us just chuck a visual shopping cart inside a chatbot window.
Which is a terrible idea. I mean, Walmart tried exactly this, and the results were disastrous. They experienced a 66% drop in conversion.
Wow, 66%. People just abandon their carts completely.
Yeah, because talking to a robot to click proceed to checkout is actually a miserable user experience.
I mean, forcing an AI to use a visual shopping cart is like teaching a golden retriever to drive a manual ute. It is clunky, and it is bound to crash. AI models do not have eyes to find the checkout button.
Yeah, they do not. Nor do they need the emotional reassurance of a visual summary screen.
Exactly. They need a direct data pipeline and API to shake hands with the store server directly.
That is the core mechanical issue. AI agents need machine-native payment rails, not human design flows. A human shopping cart requires manual data entry and visual verification.
While an AI agent just needs a secure, instant protocol to exchange value with another machine.
Right. Which brings us to the heavyweight tech players. Coinbase, Cloudflare, and Stripe are forming a nonprofit under the Linux Foundation to govern something called Buy 402.
Okay, Buy 402.
Yeah, it is an open source protocol for instant machine-to-machine payments using stablecoins.
Wait, let me pause you there because the mechanics of this are crucial. Why stablecoins? Why can an AI agent not just use a regular digital dollar from a traditional bank account?
Well, because a machine cannot pass a Know Your Customer background check. It does not have a physical identity, a passport, or a home address.
Right, so a traditional bank cannot legally open an account for an algorithm.
Exactly. But a machine can hold a cryptographic wallet. Stablecoins act as the programmable bridge.
Ah, I see. They hold their peg to a traditional currency, but they live on open source ledgers where machines can interact natively.
Spot on. The Buy 402 protocol allows 2 algorithms to mathematically verify each other and settle a transaction in milliseconds. And they are in a fierce race against Paradigm and their machine payments protocol to build the default payment roads for AI.
I understand the technical elegance of that, but look, I have a genuine point of skepticism here. Giving an autonomous agent direct access to my money feels incredibly risky.
It sounds terrifying, honestly.
Right. We have all seen these AI models hallucinate or confidently provide the wrong answer. How do we stop a shopping algorithm from hallucinating a purchase and deciding, I urgently need to buy 400 pool noodles from a wholesaler in another country?
Well, that is the exact vulnerability these new protocols are engineered to solve. You cannot just hand an AI your raw credit card details and hope for the best.
No, you would be bankrupt in an hour.
Exactly. The solution requires entirely new identity systems and strict programmable spending controls. The protocol ensures the agent operates within a very narrow, mathematically enforced set of rules.
So it relies on a smart contract that explicitly states the parameters.
Yes, for instance, the contract might dictate that the agent can only spend up to $50, can only interact with verified grocery merchants, and can only buy items from a pre-approved household list.
And if the agent somehow hallucinates and tries to buy the 400 pool noodles.
The machine payment rail simply rejects the transaction at the protocol level. The money literally cannot move.
So the rails themselves act as the adult in the room, refusing to process anything outside the mathematical boundaries. That makes total sense.
It is the only way to make it safe.
And if these AI agents are executing transactions externally, they are also fundamentally breaking and rebuilding how companies operate internally. We are moving from AI buying our groceries to AI essentially running the corporate office.
This is where the internal architecture of the corporate world gets entirely flipped on its head. A Battery Venture survey of 129 chief financial officers gives us a sobering snapshot of the current reality.
Okay, what are the numbers?
Well, 79% of these CFOs are actively piloting AI in their operations.
79% is a massive chunk of the market.
It is. But the kicker is that only 4% report pilot success rates above 50%.
Wait, really? Only 4% are making it work most of the time?
Yeah, it is a colossal failure rate.
So if I'm reading between the lines here, the raw models themselves must be the problem. The survey cited model inaccuracy as the top barrier at 71%, I think?
Yes, exactly. The raw models are essentially brilliant but chaotic interns. You cannot just let them loose on the company credit card or sensitive client files.
Right, they need rigid structure.
You hit the nail on the head.
Mm-hmm.
The solution is not just waiting around for better raw models to arrive. The companies actually winning in this space are building what we call the application layer, or orchestration harnesses.
Orchestration harnesses. Okay, break down the mechanics of a harness for me. If the AI is the chaotic intern, how does the harness actually keep them in line?
Think of a harness as a rigid digital assembly line. It breaks down complex corporate workflows into tiny, manageable tasks.
So it's not just asking one bot to do everything.
Exactly. Let us say an AI is tasked with reviewing a vendor contract. The harness does not just feed the whole document to one model.
Right.
It takes the text, sends the legal clauses to a specialized legal model, routes the pricing numbers to a maths model to check the arithmetic, and then queries the company internal database.
To ensure the terms align with historical precedents. So it manages the memory, enforces the logic, and ensures the output actually matches company policy before handing it off to a human for final approval.
Precisely. And every time a human manager has to step in and override that AI intern within an enterprise workflow, it creates a structured decision trace.
I was actually reading about this compounding data loop. In the consumer space, platforms got incredibly smart by tracking every time we clicked or did not click on a video. It is binary, highly structured data.
Right. But enterprise software never had that learning loop because corporate decisions are messy.
They are incredibly messy. A decision to approve a budget involves 3 different departments, unrecorded phone calls, Slack messages, and weird internal political dynamics.
Traditional software could never capture that context.
But now, with these decision traces, the large language models can ingest all those unstructured emails, meeting transcripts, and negotiation drafts.
Exactly. Every single correction turns fragmented corporate decisions into institutional intelligence. The AI learns the exact messy reality of how the company actually prefers to operate.
That is brilliant, and we are seeing forward-thinking companies take this to the absolute extreme. Block, the financial services company, is reorganizing its entire corporate structure around AI. They are actively eliminating middle management altogether.
Which is a huge structural shift.
Yeah, and it is exactly as terrifying as it sounds for anyone who loves a spreadsheet. But if you think about it historically, middle management is just a constraint that has existed since the Roman legions.
That is a great way to look at it.
You have 10 soldiers, you need a centurion to manage them, you have 10 entry-level employees, you need a regional manager to aggregate their information, filter it, and pass it up the chain.
Management layers exist primarily to handle the slow flow of information.
Right. And that is exactly the friction block is targeting. They are betting they do not need human beings to route information anymore.
No, instead they're relying on a company world model and a customer world model. These central AI systems ingest all the real-time transaction data, internal messages, and project documents.
So they connect the individual contributors directly to the top decision makers, completely removing the human information filter in the middle.
Yes, the algorithm becomes the ultimate aggregator.
Okay, so we have explored how AI is restructuring corporate operations and internal hierarchies. But I want to bring this back to you, the listener. How is all this going to restructure your personal bank account?
That is where things get really tangible. Because this AI agent revolution is about to completely eliminate what financial analysts call the inertia premium in banking.
Ah, the inertia premium. That is essentially the lazy tax, right?
Exactly. It is the bedrock of retail banking profits. It is the money banks make because you and I are simply too tired, too busy, or too overwhelmed to move our deposits from a checking account paying 0 interest into a high-yield account paying 5%.
Right, because the process is an absolute nightmare. You have to fill out forms, verify your identity with a passport, update all your direct debits, and change your payroll details.
Nobody wants to spend their weekend doing that.
Exactly. So we just leave the cash sitting there doing nothing, and the bank loans it out and profits off the spread. But if I have a personal AI agent, it changes the game entirely.
Oh, fundamentally. Your personal agent will constantly scan the market via APIs.
Right. It automatically shuttles my deposits to the highest yield accounts overnight and maximizes my credit card rewards without me filling out a single form.
And that automated capital flight is absolutely terrifying for traditional institutions. If consumer funds constantly auto-optimize, it could shrink global banking profits by up to 10%.
10%. That is a titanic amount of capital evaporating.
It is huge. And you can see the panic setting in across the industry. Fintechs are scrambling to lock in high-value customers before these agents commoditize everything.
We are definitely seeing this scramble play out aggressively. Chime, the neobank, is rolling out a premium tier offering 5% cash back and 3.75% savings yields.
But there is a catch with that, right?
Yep, it is only for users with $3,000 plus in monthly direct deposits. They are climbing upmarket to capture the mass affluent before the AI agents steal them.
Makes sense. And startups are also bundling services tightly just to survive. Mercury is nearing a $5 billion valuation and acquiring a payroll startup called Central to completely dominate the CFO suite.
It perfectly mirrors Capital One buying Brex and Ramp acquiring Juno. The strategy is clear: become the single platform a business cannot afford to leave.
And beyond bundling, you have companies getting incredibly creative and arguably aggressive with how they lend you money in the first place.
Yes, this is the part that genuinely made me do a double take. Cash App is introducing a feature to turn peer-to-peer transfers over $25 into short-term installment plans using a fixed upfront fee.
It is a massive shift in how we think about credit.
Hang on. You are telling me I can split a pub parmy with a mate, pay them back on Friday, and then retroactively put my half of the chicken on lay-by on Tuesday? Because apparently that is where we are now.
Yeah, it is a fascinating evolution of lending. What Cash App is doing is unlocking liquidity from already completed transactions.
Because traditional buy now, pay later happens at the point of sale, right? You decide to finance a television before you take it home.
Exactly. But Cash App realized that their users generate enormous volume in peer-to-peer transfers.
Ah, so you already paid your friend for dinner, but a few days later, you realize you were short on rent.
Right. By letting you retroactively finance that completed $30 transfer, they are tapping into an entirely new dimension of consumer lending.
It is positioned somewhere in the, the gray area between traditional credit and earned wage access. It is remarkably clever and uniquely tuned to the reality of how people actually manage their cash flow week to week.
It really is. And just to round out this banking picture, the White House Council of Economic Advisors noted that stablecoin rewards will not meaningfully disrupt traditional banking.
Which is interesting because the legacy banks have been screaming that digital dollars offering high yield would cause massive deposit flight and crash lending.
Right, but the economists say it would barely move the needle on core bank lending functions, reinforcing the consumer upside of these digital assets.
But look, all of this seamless automation, the auto-optimizing of bank accounts, the invisible commerce, the intelligent orchestration harnesses, it requires a foundation.
A very expensive foundation.
Yeah.
And that comes with a monumental cost.
The physical infrastructure. Someone actually has to pay for the servers processing all these autonomous decisions.
Exactly. This requires an incomprehensible amount of computing power. We are looking at an infrastructure and big capital phase that just dwarfs previous tech cycles.
I mean, Oracle has just appointed Hillary Maxon as their new chief financial officer specifically to oversee an aggressive AI data center expansion.
And they expect their free cash flow to be negative for years into the future. They plan to raise up to $50 billion just to pour concrete and buy silicon.
A legacy tech giant deliberately planning to run negative cash flow for the foreseeable future just to fund data centers. That is wild. Are we just building massive digital ghost towns if the AI application layer fails to deliver?
It is a risk, but it highlights the sheer capital-intensive reality of trying to compete with hyperscalers like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google.
But let's look at the distribution side of this capital race, too. Anthropic is planning a $200 million investment into a $1 billion venture with private equity firms like Blackstone.
Yes, which is a very strategic move.
Wait, partnering with a private equity firm, that feels like a Trojan horse strategy. Are they just trying to forcefully install their AI into every company Blackstone owns because distribution matters more than having the smartest model?
That is an incredibly astute read of this situation. Private equity firms own huge portfolios of traditional companies. We're talking healthcare providers, logistics firms, manufacturers.
Right. And Anthropic realizes that selling an AI software suite to a standalone hospital is a slow, painful sales cycle.
Exactly. But if a private equity firm owns the hospital network, they can mandate the software from the board level down.
Oh, wow. They can forcefully deploy their AI tools across hundreds of portfolio companies simultaneously.
Winning in AI now depends just as much on top-down distribution as it does on raw model intelligence.
Which perfectly explains where the venture capital money is flowing. Vertical AI captured 53% of VC deal volume.
Investors are definitely moving away from broad horizontal chat tools.
Yeah, they are pouring money into structural, industry-specific applications, especially in healthcare and financial services.
But it is not just AI, where we are seeing this appetite for eye-watering capital expenditure. If you look at the broader macro environment, the market is aggressively rewarding huge, highly illiquid bets on future infrastructure across the board.
The broader money velocity gives us a crucial sense of market health. SpaceX submitted a confidential IPO registration targeting a record-breaking $1.75 trillion valuation and a $75 billion raise.
To put that into perspective, that is more than double the previous record set by Saudi Aramco. The market is happily absorbing these enormous capital requirements.
And underlying consumer spending is still strong, with card volumes up 6.4%, driven heavily by digital payments. The money is flowing fast, even as retail investors flip to net sellers of U.S. equities.
Which historically might actually signal a near-term market rebound. The capital is just moving at breakneck speed.
But here is the critical vulnerability. When money flows that fast and you engineer all the friction out of a system, you have to ask what happens when things go wrong.
Right. We have built the server farms, we have deployed the autonomous agents, and we have completely automated the money flow. But we are now looking at the fragility of speed and highly sophisticated fraud.
I was looking at the numbers on this. Global cyber fraud reached 1.6% of 116 billion transactions. Bot-driven fraud surged 59%, and desktop browser attacks more than doubled. Why are desktop attacks spiking so hard?
Because the avenues for attack are shifting based on security updates. Mobile operating systems have become incredibly secure environments.
Right, utilizing biometric enclaves that make it remarkably difficult to compromise banking apps directly.
So attackers are naturally exploiting weaker channels. They're using malware hidden in desktop browser extensions to execute persistent, small-scale financial theft.
So it is fully automated, bot-driven fraud designed to slip under the radar by draining micro amounts during authenticated browser sessions.
Exactly. And the risks get exponentially scarier when you zoom out to macro finance.
Oh, absolutely. The IMF released a report warning that tokenized financial markets could actually amplify market crises because we are pulling out the circuit breakers, right?
Yes. Traditional finance has settlement delays built in almost as a shock absorber. When a market panics, that settlement time gives humans a moment to breathe, assess, and intervene.
But tokenized markets settle instantly. If an algorithmic agent decides to dump an asset and a million other agents follow suit in a fraction of a millisecond on a tokenized ledger, the shock absorber is entirely gone.
That is the central paradox of this entire movement. Yeah. The exact characteristic that makes AI agents and tokenized finance so efficient, which is their frictionless speed, is precisely what makes them so dangerous during a systemic panic.
There is no human time buffer remaining to halt the cascade. We are essentially taking the brakes off a speeding car to make it more fuel efficient. Brilliant.
Exactly. This aligns perfectly with Jamie Dimon's shareholder letter from JP Morgan. He frames the current economic resilience as incredibly fragile, shaped by geopolitical tension and global fragmentation.
He is looking at a financial world that is moving faster than ever, but lacks the structural guardrails we spent the last century building.
Yet, despite those glaring structural warnings, the momentum is entirely unstoppable. SWIFT, the global messaging network that serves as the backbone for traditional banks, is moving forward with a blockchain-based shared ledger.
Right, for always-on international transfers using tokenized deposits.
The legacy financial system has accepted that this frictionless, instant world is inevitable, and they are building the rails to support it, regardless of the macro risks.
The traditional banks are looking at the autonomous AI agents, they are looking at the stablecoin protocols, and they're realizing that if they do not build the high-speed rail right now, they are going to be left riding a horse in a digital age.
It is a phenomenal transformation.
It really is. But it leaves us with a fascinating question to ponder. If AI agents eventually handle all of our mundane purchasing, auto-optimize our savings across borders, and negotiate our utility bills completely in the background without us lifting a finger, what happens to the human psychology of money?
That is the real unknown.
Exactly. Will we even feel connected to the value of a dollar when we never actually spend it ourselves?
Yeah.
It has been incredible exploring these concepts with you. This is the Vocal Technologist signing off, leaving you to ponder exactly who or what will be balancing your checkbook tomorrow.
Spoken Tech for your ears.